Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning into the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. My guest today is none other than Jeff Robbins, the CEO of Live Data. Live Data is a leading innovator in real-time operational intelligence for hospitals, health systems, and surgical centers. Jeff, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jeff, I recently read an article you had written that maybe you want to have a discussion with you, and it was titled The Triad of Modernizing Healthcare, Generative AI, Interoperability, and Advanced Operational Systems. So with your permission, we'll kind of launch into those and kind of just have a discussion through them. But let's start with generative AI. What's going on with that, and how does it affect AI in your view, and what are the challenges?
Yeah, it's a very topical thing, but obviously we're dealing with some ponderous terminology, and I didn't invent it, so don't blame me. But the breakthroughs that started at Google, really, maybe a little bit at Harvard, were kind of changed AI. AI was a long time in the making and was probably overhyped for a while. Is going to do all sorts of things, but really intriguing things happened when they figured out some algorithms that worked on statistics on a massive basis. Huge data sets of, like, exaggerating, but like all the written things.
Yes.
And some early describers of it described it as a stochastic parrot, which that phrase stuck with me as a kind of a mixed term, because it kind of puts you on edge and on alert a little bit. But we've all, I think, anyone who's experimented with ChatGPT or just had it write you something, it's pretty astounding how the algorithm can write reasonably passable English that has a compelling vibe to it. That feature is now being applied to things like helping programmers write code, because it can rummage through it. I'm using human metaphors.
Sure.
And come up with code that's probably like what you're asking it about or prompting it to do. Truth be told, it's not always code that's correct, but even when it's not correct, sometimes seeing a pattern that's close enough is better than a blank sheet of paper. Anyone who writes, has experienced that blank sheet of paper. And so anyways, that's probably way too much background on the topic. But the question then becomes, well, how could this help us in healthcare?
Correct.
And with that initial obvious nervousness about the inaccuracy component, so there's, I think the question has to turn into, like, for generative AI, it's like, well, where can you take advantage of getting off the blank page onto something reasonable without turning over care critical things to that algorithm? Because it's not, by itself an algorithm designed to come up with accurate answers. And so that, and I think in general, healthcare professionals know this, but people are looking at ways that, much like in law, where you'll see boilerplate used for contract bases that then gets edited, places where it's reasonable to use boilerplate and then, fix it to make it.
I can see, Jeff, I guess, some of the things about AI, since it has obviously escaped the laboratories and is in the hands of mere mortals now. In healthcare, kind of the back office stuff of coding and reimbursement and denials and scheduling and those kind of things, perhaps don't pose potential risk to the delivery of healthcare as far as making decisions. And so my concern, be interested to hear your thoughts about it, is a true risk will be if it is used in such a way by, in the healthcare decision making aspects of things, at least at this point.
Well, it's a valid concern because, again, you can end up with such compelling looking prose that, you might forget that there's no fact checking going on with it. And so, we're beginning to see specialty models get worked on that have, in addition to this generative algorithm, a cross-cutting concern with like a knowledge base and fact checking and truth seeking behavior. So I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of the development of this. The risk now would be jumping in too naively and using it where it shouldn't be used, like just letting it make a diagnosis or
treatment plans.
Yeah,
and
right.
One thing I've run across, Jeff, is in electronic health records systems now, to be certified, there was a requirement to have clinical decision support. That was evidence-based on a patient's record. And now certifications are being awarded for predictive clinical decision support. And those are based on data models. And if those data models are not representative of the full demographic aspects of who they're dealing with, you've got that almost implicit bias.
Yeah, which could lead to terrible impact.
We had that with clinical trials, and that's kind of been cleaned up somewhat. At least I hope so.
Yeah, and again, as a technologist, a certain guilt feeling comes up, preaching caution on certain things because you want to see innovation encouraged.
Yes,
it's because of the safety concerns. If you're overly cautious, nothing advances, right? We have machine in the loop on anesthesia now, yielding way better results from anesthesia than before. And that took a lot of doing to get comfortable, with closed loop control on anesthesia or whatever. And that's a very purpose-built algorithm, implemented in reliable hardware and all the rest. Going from that to kind of let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? And just apply it everywhere, wherever it might look like it fits, raises concerns. But I know people, for example, in radiology, there's some interesting companies doing readings with it that I think are improving on spotting problems, right? Over human eyes. And so, we also don't want to hold back improved care.
Absolutely. And that radiographic review and interpretation, that is an area that really does show fantastic promise. More than promise, is actually being used out there. But you bring up these other companies, but let me get back. So what do you do at Live Data? What does Live Data do? And who are your customers?
Yeah, well, Live Data is focused on the fairly complicated workflow and logistics surrounding surgery. And our goal is to really to take what could be the most important day in a patient's life and do everything we can to surround the process with safety and efficiency measures that ensure smooth operation. Our customers tend to be hospital systems, and I'd say right now, to a lesser extent, ambulatory surgery centers, although we're seeing growth in that area as well. And we're not telling the surgeon how to do their job. What we're doing is surrounding them and the other folks on the team anesthesia, nurses, transport techs, administrators, everyone involved, have a simpler way of planning out surgery and then performing it the day of a patient's surgery, and doing the follow-up and analytics on that care afterwards. And one of the, as it's turned out, one of the things we've helped our clients do is, given that we still see a large number of surgeons who are in private practice, surrounding a hospital.
Yes.
Making it a lot easier for them and the hospital to collaborate on optimizing use of that scarce OR space, helping make sure that cases start on time and these expensive OR suites are fully utilized. And in the process, making it easier for the surgeon to know what's going on and when there's time available, which in turn helps them ease the patient's mind with more certainty about when your case will have, when we'll get you in and all the rest.
And so, if I may talk about it in more mundane forms, make sure I understand, is this a software foundation that has to do with scheduling and updated notifications and making?
Yeah, it's kind of, we run the full spectrum of the patient's journey from that first consult with a surgeon all the way to getting them safely home. And in the course of that, our software has planning modules that include block allocation, so hospitals can, rationally allocate different blocks of time to different surgeon groups. But then the actual scheduling, we work as a layer on top of the EHR. So in addition to doing this, everything we do bidirectionally integrates with the EHR. So we're not adding new keystrokes, we're removing keystrokes. We're making it easier to schedule, and then we're pushing the schedule into the EHR. Our mantra is the EHR is the system of record. And so we're maintaining the integrity of that record, but we're making it a lot easier to interact with it. And so we kind of use the phrase system of engagement as the category we occupy. But unlike, say, a CRM, and you'll see some of the HR vendors talking about CRM, that largely is about patient portals and patient access, which is very important. But we're not competing with them on that. We're really looking at the engagement with the surgeons, with the surgical teams, as another dimension of, who's the customer, so to speak, of the hospital.
Right.
Before
we go into the next topic that I gleaned from your article, let me mention to our audience that if you're just joining us, I'm Jim Tate, and on this episode of the Tate Chronicles, I'm speaking with Jeff Robbins of Live Data. Jeff, let's talk about interoperability a little bit. It's something that everybody says, well, I can't really describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Well, and the government got involved with interoperability.
Yes.
And, we'll resist all the obvious things we could say about what that might have ended up producing, but it just to highlight how important everyone knows it is. I would say in our field, harkening back to our software's need to bidirectionally interface to the HR, we need to be able to read information about the case, the team, the patient from the HR. And as our system records things about the case, be it the schedule before or say day of surgery, we have a unique electronic checklist system in the OR to perform the safe surgery checklist recommended by WHO and required by Joint Commission. That checklist, both the prompts, what is this checklist? Well, you're making sure you're validating that who the patient is, which side of the body you're operating on. Are you aware of the patient's latex allergy, and is the room set up properly given that, etc. Those prompts come from the HR, but then the timestamp of when the team recorded the answers needs to be pushed back to the HR. Both those directions, finding out stuff and then pushing back that timestamp, requires interoperability. Without it, you can't use the EHR as the system of record. You need to record things. And so interoperability, from our point of view, is a way of talking about a certain kind of openness from the EHR to support ancillary systems that are performing logistical and workflow functions, in performing the work.
And so the work that Live Data does, it sounds like, in this definition of interoperability, is you are a layer on top of the EHR that is able to, push and pull data.
Correct.
From the EHR. In the terms, the larger terms of interoperability that certainly the government is focused on. Of course, the ultimate interoperability would be if everybody just had one health record and everybody, all providers and patients, looked at the same health record. We don't have that. Maybe if you live in a community in which the physicians work for the hospital and everybody's looking at the same record, that's fine. But as soon as you are outside that silo, that disappears.
Yeah.
And so we've had all these technological attempts that have been successful to a certain degree of creating interoperable files like CCDAs, and then there's the FHIR standard and the APIs, and then the looming network of networks, TEFCA, all trying to create the illusion that there's just one medical record. Go ahead.
Yes, and but it's a kind of the definition morphs to what's really feasible, and so you end up having almost like a regression to the mean, or least common denominator. In order to achieve a certain kind of uniformity, it's like everyone in the world kind of learns business English, and it doesn't mean you're writing bold new poetry all of a sudden in English just because you're speaking it. And so you kind of get that level of ability to share the data sets that are defined, which end up being the results of haggling in committees, involve people protective of things they don't want to share. And why would you not want to share? Well, there's an inherent business imperative for the large EHR vendors to try to maintain site control, customer control. You're not looking to make a single thing that's generic and a commodity that someone else could, cut the price tenfold because they just built an open source generic one. So you have a lot of give and take there, where you get, the data sets you get are good and they're well validated and calibrated.
Correct.
And fine. There's a lot of technology behind validation and all that. It's good, but it's inherently going to be like a very thin subset of the rich data sets that are in the actual EHR. And nothing illustrates that better than the data sets of surgery. If you look at the FHIR standard and how the subset of it that pertains to surgery, they'll say, well, look, it has a schedule and there's a case. And I'm like, yeah, great. What's on the sterile cart going into that room? Oh, what? No, we don't. No, no, we don't do that. What about the timeout? Where can we see which questions were on it and what was recorded? Because, back to trying to understand safety practices, if you wanted to do comprehensive multi-site studies of things, there's a lot of data that's just not even a topic for discussion yet. And that's not me being negative about the efforts to standardize. It's very positive and essential, but I think the stuff being worked on inherently has a consumer. There's someone who needs it for a reason, and that's what you get. But that
Yes.
doesn't mean you're getting kind of a comprehensive deep dive into the full data set of a EHR. It's kind of almost like I don't remember when Esperanto was invented, but
Yeah.
looking at all the different languages people speak and all the trouble it causes because people don't understand each other, and I'll solve it. We'll just have one logical language, and
Yes.
it's like, yeah, but not really. And so,
I haven't heard that word in a long time. Jeff, we only have about 5 more minutes before we run out of time.
Yeah.
The third topic of the Trinity that was in your article was titled Advanced Operational Systems. Is that what you're talking about with the live data offerings, those advanced operational systems?
Yeah, we're helping our clients dramatically improve the efficiency of their surgery centers with the kind of the holy grail of running more cases every day without adding staff or overtime, without making people scramble or do anything unsafe. But rather by getting things running to a very safe standard cadence with a lot more certainty because everything's ready on time for each step in the process. So we've brought an element of process control that's common in industry. And I hesitate to use the analogy because no one wants to think of their hospital as a factory. But, some of the quality control steps done in manufacturing turn out to be applicable when suitably translated.
As you describe the work you're involved with, Jeff, it seems like the goal is to remove friction.
Yes, that's a great way of framing it.
Yeah.
Exactly so. In friction yields heat, it's waste, and it's a metaphor, but it's true. There's all sorts of handoffs and points of contact where people end up saying, I better get on the phone. I better call down and find out what they meant. I better ask where is the number 4 tool that I had asked for on this cart.
Mm-hmm.
Is this patient really ready? And pre-op, the room's ready. Where are they? Oh, someone left them down in radiology. Well, where's the transport tech? There's so many small things that are all understandable and rarely disastrous for safety or life, but they add up to a lot of frictional costs. And if you set your mind to it and have helpful tools, and we think our tool set is an example of helpful, of course, you can alter how that works and make it a lot more visible, a lot more clear, and you end up, frankly, with happier nursing staff because there's just less chaos.
Well, before we sign off and say goodbye, Jeff, how can our listeners find out more about the work being done at Live Data, and how do they get in contact?
Well, sure. I mean, the simplest way is to go to www.livedata.com, or I'd invite your listeners, if they want, to contact me directly, Jeff R. at livedata.com. Happy to start a conversation.
Oh, great. To our audience, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. And of course, I offer a special salute to my guest today, Jeff Robbins of Live Data. Jeff, thanks for coming aboard today.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed the conversation, and hope to continue it with you sometime and get your comments on how things are evolving over the next couple of years, Jeff.
I'd enjoy that. Thank you.
Yeah. You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. That's healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.